They are images seen on screen more and more often. Border control officials searching for illegal goods, interrogating unwanted newcomers, demanding to see their documents, deporting those deemed undesirable, all in the name of protecting the homeland. And those pictures don't just end up on newscasts. Border security programs are now a subgenre of reality television. Producers say the shows provide an insight into the essential work of customs and immigration agencies. But in the post-9/11 climate and in the context of a global refugee surge, the format smacks of tabloid TV at its worst, often exaggerating and sensationalizing the threats posed by those crossing the border. For governments with law and order policies to sell, these shows are like paid political advertising without the paid part. For broadcasters, it's television made on the cheap. Never mind that those tuning in at home might be left with a distorted view of what really happens at their nation's borders. The Listening Post's Johanna Hoos now on the dangers of border security TV.
Border Force, America's gatekeepers.
These are the gatekeepers of the most talked about border in the world.
Border Security, Australia's front line.
Immigration detains a busload of illegal workers.
Border Patrol New Zealand.
Immigration screen and profile for undesirable and unsuitable arrivals.
Just some of the border security TV shows currently on air around the world.
We're in a time where immigration is increasingly part of popular discourse, and anti-immigration discourse is increasingly part of popular culture. So the idea that we need to shut down our borders, that quote-unquote illegal immigration is changing our culture and our demographics. And so border security shows really appeal to people's desires to control borders.
These shows don't exist in a vacuum. And I think you just need to look at the sort of language that's used around immigration. Certainly in the Australian example, the show is called Border Force, Australia's front line. I mean, front line is a militaristic term. It's something you associate with war and with conflict, and I think that really sets the tone for what we're talking about.
The format is simple, and it's cheap. Crews get behind the scenes, accompanying border security as they search for illegal goods, interrogate the suspicious, and deport the unwanted.
And CBSA officers want to know who's coming to play and who's coming to stay.
Border crossings and airport service filming locations, while shows like Australia's Frontline or Border Patrol New Zealand also feature raids on migrant workers or visa overstayers, those who've already made it into the country.
At an early morning roadside operation, immigration suspect they have caught this Indonesian man working illegally.
Japan's recently premiered Taikyo no Shunkan, or Caught at the Moment of Deportation, ramped up that drama. It follows a group of immigration officers in their hunt for so-called illegal aliens. The broadcast has faced a lot of critique for its lack of balance and for turning the perils of immigration into entertainment.
One of the problems with programs like Caught at the Moment of Deportation is that there's no journalistic rigor. It looks journalistic because you're with the officers with your camera, so you as the viewer can feel you can judge what's happening, but we don't actually talk to the other side.
おはようございます。入国管理局です。身分証明書出して。出して。パスポート。
In one segment, Tokyo immigration officers stake out an apartment building. The police officers enter the apartment and they find 3 Vietnamese guest workers. They interrogate them on camera, and then the next day they are deported. We tend to think that they're guilty, but there's been no due process. It seems like mission accomplished. Good job, police.
The shows do make good TV, but in order to do that, they need to sensationalise and exaggerate the idea of a threat at our borders.
New Zealand's air, sea and land borders are constantly under attack.
These shows do give the impression that countries are under siege from overwhelming numbers of people seeking to break laws and flout regulations.
That could destroy our economy and our whole way of life.
What they don't show, because it doesn't make good TV, is the tens of thousands, in fact hundreds of thousands of people who pass through borders legitimately every day.
Stuart Morris is the executive producer of Border Force, America's Gatekeepers, a show originally produced for British broadcaster UK TV, but since sold to National Geographic for American audiences. The 10-part series follows the Department of Homeland Security's Customs and Border Protection Agency, CBP, and their operations at the bridges that connect the US and Mexico. Morse calls his show an observational documentary and disputes the idea that border control shows misrepresent the threats posed by those crossing the border.
We're recording things which would happen even if our cameras aren't there. It is truly a kind of a fly-on-the-wall obs doc series, watching from the point of view of Customs and Border Protection officers.
Lately there's been a trend on people trying to smuggle narcotics on this type of bottles.
One of the problems that we had is that we had a small crew covering 28 bridges. There was a drug bust on a daily basis, but some of them happened 300 miles from where we were at that time and we couldn't film it. If we had a crew in every bridge, we would show the true extent of the problems that officers face. So I think we kind of got a really good, fair reflection of what they do and how they operate.
For critics, the issues go beyond the narratives that these shows create, such as casting border security officials as the good guys. The program Border Security: Canada's Front Line is a textbook case of that syndrome, or at least it was. According to a study conducted by a group that campaigned for the cancellation of the show, in most episodes, more suspects were deemed guilty based on the color of their skin, and producers turned the migrants involved into unwitting actors. One migrant worker, Oscar Mata Duran, sued the program in 2013 for breach of privacy. Duran's workplace was raided by the Border Security Agency and his deportation was filmed and prepared for broadcast. But Duran won his case. In 2016, the show was cancelled and the episode never went to air.
During the course of that raid, we got calls from family members to say, help us get our family members out of detention. And during the course of that conversation, a number of family members said there was massive film crews. And through that, we realized that, basically Canada Border Security was trying to film a very sensationalist raid. And during the course of talking to the men who were in detention, we found out that Oscar Mata Duran, as well as a number of other workers, signed consent forms to be on this TV show. And this generated a massive campaign against the TV show on the basis that people's privacy rights were being violated, that people were not able to give informed consent, that deportation was being used as entertainment.
The criticism of Canada's Front Line went far beyond Oscar Mata Duran's case. The show's production company, Force 4, got a helping hand from the government in the form of subsidies, and they agreed to surrender editorial control of the program to the Border Protection Agency. It's the price that the producers paid in exchange for access, and they aren't the only ones to do so.
In the cases of Australia, investigations have uncovered that the Immigration Department, the Department of Border Security, has final sign-off on every single program that goes to air and is able to manipulate the show to its own ends. These are, for all intents and purposes, government propaganda. This is not to suggest that what's happening is not the reality of what's happening, but it is a prejudiced and distorted view of that reality.
The authorities in Australia had a little bit too much control, and I think that's unfortunate, especially if other shows are tarnished with that. I mean, we signed a multimedia agreement with Homeland Security, which is very non-restrictive. They have no editorial control over what we put out, but I think what they get out of it is they inform the public through a process which is accessible. And, members of the public aren't going to watch some corporate video about, CBP, but they might actually watch a show about the Southwest border and the work that CBP does, told in a kind of independent way by independent producers.
It's essentially free PR in prime time, and it's syndicated into reruns, so it's great. I mean, you invest a little bit of time by allowing a camera crew to accompany, and you've got an hour-long commercial for the great things your government's doing.
Commercial in more ways than one. A free advert for the agencies being profiled, a TV hit that's affordable for those producing it. But what about the bits that don't make the cut? The crucial backstories of the lives ruined that just don't make for good television. Perhaps, at a time of unprecedented displacement, audiences should be more discriminating over border control TV, programming that clearly crosses the line.